Hello guys and welcome back to the JGI podcast. And I'm pleased to announce that for today's episode we have a very special guest. It's Jamie Jackson, the Manchester football correspondent for The Guardian. Jamie, how are you doing, mate?
Good, thanks. How are you, Josh?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time, especially because I presume you've been a very busy man this week. Because for those that don't know, Jamie's got a book coming out next week, October 29th, called The Red Apprentice. Focuses all about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, so we're going to have a little chat about that today. There it is there. And to celebrate the release, we're actually giving away 5 copies on my Twitter account as well. So I'm going to leave a link to the tweet in the description. All you have to do is retweet, give myself and Jamie a follow, and we're going to announce a winner before the game on Saturday against Chelsea. So some of you are going to get your hands on it, or obviously with Christmas coming up, it could be a nice little present for someone else. So yeah, the book's going to be the main focus today. So I think the best starting point, Jamie, is just, do you just want to give us a little insight into the book, and also where did the idea first come from and how did everything come together?
Yeah, sure. So the book is basically a biography. So you sort of, you join his story from when he was a kid, a little kid, at 6, 7, 8, growing up in a place called Kristiansund, which is sort of on the north, kind of like the northwest or the west-ish of Norway on the coast. Yeah. Beautiful place. Progressing there as a footballer, youth star, as you can imagine, and then playing for the sort of local team, Klausen Nagen. Then moving to Molde. And that's where he then obviously getting the move to United. So all his football career, speaking to sort of all sorts of people. I think I spoke to between 40 and 50 people, various sort of parts or stages of his life and career. And then obviously after United, he was like a sort of, well, at first he was sort of coaching the forwards at one point, the Tevez, Ronaldo, Rooney line. I mean, don't know how much coaching he had to do with that lot, but that's how he started at United, because Ferguson basically loved him as a son, or loves him as a son. And then he was a reserved coach, manager with Warren Joyce. He won a title, the reserve team, 09-10. Goes to Molde, wins a couple of titles there, very first position as a manager in his first year, then retains the title. That club, Molde, never won the Norwegian title in its 100 years. Then obviously Cardiff, so not bombing there, not doing very well. Goes back home, has a little think about stuff. Goes back to Molde, and then in the end, United come calling, and then it's obviously all about from there. Yeah, his time caretaker manager, which let's say has been turbulent. But to be honest, having covered United since the second half of the season that City won it the first time under Mancini, and then the last one of Ferguson when you won it the last time. Yeah. To now, it was always going to be turbulent. I did a book actually about called A Season of Red about sort of Van Gaal, Mourinho, and Moyes. So anyway, yeah, it's basically that. But hopefully, where did I get the idea from? It's an interesting question, really. He's one of these public figures who's very well known, but there have been a couple of books about it, but not really what I'd call an in-depth biography. There's not that much stuff that's actually known about him beyond maybe what we all know. Yeah. So that's where the idea came from. It took me it has taken me about a year and a half to write it. Yeah. So hopefully people like it. Obviously it's up to them. It was interesting for me because I was finding out as I went along about the guy, and it is interesting. What was interesting as I was writing it, obviously, his caretaker season was going on, then becoming permanent manager, and I was sort of reflecting on some of the things I was being told about him, thinking I could see how he's sort of handling different situations. So, I mean, the Red Apprentice is a good name for him because it to a certain extent, anyone who goes to United as a manager is going to be the Red Apprentice, just because it's such a massive club. It's like no other club really in our country. Even Liverpool, it's just different kettle of fish to Liverpool. It really is. And so, as I say, I hope people like it, but that's obviously up to them.
I was going to say, obviously, the title, I think, is quite significant because obviously the word apprentice is something we associate with people learning on the job, or, people who aren't so experienced. And obviously, I think when we analyse, or people are critical of Solskjaer, the context of his probably lack of, managerial experience has to be considered. So obviously when you're kind of looking into his background at Norway, do you think, a bit of a hard question, but do you always get the idea that going into being a manager, is that something, do you think that was always written for him in terms of his future, or do you think it's something that he stumbled across?
I don't think I think he's always been keen to learn as a young player, kid player, 9, 10. I spoke to coaches at that stage of his life, and they were saying even at that age he was quite analytical, as much as a 9 or 10 or 11-year-old.
Cool.
But So he's always had this learning thing, and his whole sort of playing career is really a triumph of willpower, getting the most out of. Obviously, he's a very talented lad, young player, but he was never going to be George Best or Ryan Giggs or, what I mean? But he had something of his own X factor. He worked on it. And what I'm trying to say, to answer your question, it's a good one, so he's always had this ability to make the most of what he has, learn, soak up information, be open to stuff. But I don't think he wanted to be a manager until he got his really bad injury. He was about late 20s. And it basically cost him the sort of the last 3 or 4 years of his career. This knee injury, and I think then he started. It was like a moment where he just thought, "Wait a minute, I love this game so much." And also during that time, Josh, he had so much time on the sidelines. He was even more soaking up what Ferguson was doing there. I mean, I always say, if you're going to learn something, I also write fiction novels, and how I've learned how to write fiction, apart from actually doing it, is reading all the greats, all the best ones, and reading as much as possible. He's like that with football. And you've got Ferguson as a teacher. Mentor, you can't really go wrong.
I'm going to say, how influential do you think Sir Alex Ferguson was on his decision, and kind of obviously him developing as a human and also like a studier of the game? How influential do you think Ferguson was on him?
Well, absolutely massive, but it would have meant nothing because Ferguson had hundreds of players go through his squads, his teams. United, but it would have meant nothing if he also wasn't able to sort of harness that and use that in an intelligent way. But I think what he's got, what Ferguson has, is his own individual X factor. I'm not saying he's the same as Ferguson, but I'm saying he's the same in that respect. Yeah, he's got his own thing going on. All the most successful people, in my opinion, in any walk of life, have their own particular way of doing things. And part of that will be taking parts of other people, like Ferguson in Solskjaer's case, but also using it in their own regard. Yeah. I mean, I think he was massive. I think Ferguson himself probably recognised that this guy. He's intelligent. He would take notes from the training sessions. He was still a player. He would stay behind all the time, practicing, his own game and looking at coaching sessions and et cetera, et cetera. And, I think Ferguson is still very important for him. So all this stuff, as I say, about mini Ferguson, I understand that, why some people might say that, but I personally look at it another way. I'm like, well, no, he's so sort of sure of himself that he doesn't really care if people believe he's just aping him, because he's going to carry on and basically be successful.
Yeah, no, some good points. And I think obviously any manager that we've seen take the job since Ferguson retired, getting compared to him is obviously just from the off. You're already on a back step, and it's an impossible job to try and replace him. Which I think one of the reasons why it has worked out for Solskjaer is because of his possibly lack of experience. There wasn't too much expectation placed on him. So he has had that little bit of time to have that bit of a cultural reset. Because obviously with Mourinho and Van Gaal, two massive names, they were put in that limelight and expectation was put on them straight away. So kind of what was your kind of opinion on Solskjaer in terms of from getting the job permanently back in March 2019 to present day? How do you think his project has come along, and also more importantly, going forward, do you think he is the right man to get us back challenging for the league under his leadership?
To the second part of your question, 100% yes. I'm not saying you're going to win it this year or get close. Yeah. I don't think anyone could do that. Even when you finish second and Mourinho, you're 19 points behind.
Yeah.
But 100%, he has got the ability. He has to prove it, of course. Sorry, what was the first part of your question then? What was it?
Saying, how do you think his project has took shape so far? Do you think he's been a success?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say, as I say, turbulence is a good word for it, very up and down. But to a certain extent, that has helped him because he's still there. And so he's got that experience. The players he now has are his players. I think finishing third last season, I mean, you might have a different opinion, but I don't think you're going to get any higher than third, really, with City. I don't think anyone. So, to finish third, okay, it was the last day of the season, but so what? You finished third.
Yeah.
Sounds to me better than fourth, but it's not first. Don't get me wrong. You're Manchester United. You have to be winning it. Of course. But no one's come close since Ferguson. It was an absolute one-off, different sort of planet kind of manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he has done well. I'm not too sure how many mistakes he's made. Really, he's certainly never made a mistake publicly or sort of said something wrong, which would be forgivable. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. A little bit like Moyes when he was trying to say, "Oh, we're trying to aspire to be City." That's not. He's not really gone down that road, has he?
I was going to mention that, but because you seem so young, I wasn't too sure you remember that. But yeah, that's a great example. And actually, Giggs, when he had his 4 games as caretaker, I think he played Liverpool, and the way he answered that question was completely different to how Moyes had. You know what I mean? And that was the difference there. So anyway, I think his players have been good. You might have an argument now or a debate now and say, well, actually, how good is Maguire? What about Daniel James? You know, but I don't think Maguire's awful. But Fernandes, what a signing he's been. And I'll tell you what was interesting for me. Every time he's been under pressure, he's kind of responded. So you lose 6 Spurs. I did that game.
Yeah.
You know, sadly for United and United fans, I'm not a fan, but, you know, it was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
You sit in crumbs. But then, you know, you got a Newcastle and you basically steamroll them. And then the game the other day, PSG, which I couldn't go to because of quarantine, but I did off the TV, obviously. Yeah. That was one of the best performances yet.
Yeah, definitely.
You've not got Greenwood. I think Bailly was injured. You know, I could go through other situations like that, and you basically battered them at home. Their goal was an own goal. You know, Martial. Blah 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 blah. That's on the back of that Spurs defeat. So I think he has something going on. If I'm a fan, I'm thinking those players want to do well, obviously for themselves, but also for the manager. So, and that's a Ferguson thing again. That's a Mourinho thing. And when he was Pomp, you know, Klopp now at Liverpool, you know, the players sort of almost love the manager.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know it's a hard black and white question when I say, do you think he's been successful? Because I think if you're someone that has followed Manchester United for every game in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era, as you say, the best word is turbulent. It's just been completely chaotic. Expectations have gone up and down. And I think one thing Solskjaer has come in and done is just kind of reset everything. And the stuff that we try and praise are some things that maybe rival fans can't really get on board because they don't watch United every week. So, for example, right now, the dressing room that I think Solskjaer has tried to rebuild with, and what he's instilled in that dressing room, is probably the best, most likeable players we've had at the club since Sir Alex Ferguson retired, in the sense that, you know, we've had a lot of players down the years that have joined for wrong reasons, whereas you get the feeling now that it's a bit more, obviously we're getting a bit more of an identity to the squad, and that's come from his recruitment and also his decisions to get rid of players as well. So obviously you did touch on the players. Do you think that the players he has the full backing of the players, and that there's such a tight-knit group?
Yeah, 100%. And what the test is when you lose 6-1, basically you're equaling worse, you know, your record worse Premier League defeat and win the last 2 games. But I would say you've got Chelsea on Saturday. You still don't quite know, you know, where you're going to be at. Yeah. But I think the players, you know, the players he's got now are his players. It's more or less his team. There's a few players, obviously, there who it's fine. But that was the other one, Josh. He dropped Pogba, didn't he? Yeah. Yeah. You know, he's dropped Pogba, and that's worked. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that's something that, I mean, that again could have backfired. You know, I think the players are definitely behind him, and the reason why is I go back to my biography, because what I was finding when I was talking to people, say he managed to say at Mulder or even at Cardiff when they got relegated, or who he played alongside, they almost seemed to kind of, you know, when they were talking about him, almost kind of light up talking about him. Like they still really liked him all these years later. It wasn't just as a manager, but also just as a person to be around. They just made them feel good about themselves. And I think that's quite an important thing. That's a bonus. You know, you can play for another manager and you might be winning stuff or doing okay, but you don't really like the guy and it's not that enjoyable. He somehow seems to have an ability to make it fun and also professional. I'll tell you what else as well. He's a hard nut. Yeah. He's steely. Yeah. And again, all this stuff about, he's a bit, how to say it, soft. He doesn't care about that because, you know, behind the scenes, he's got his own version of the hairdryer. It's probably very, very turned down, and you know he's not rolling any shouting, but people listen to him. You know, and that third place for me made the club, the manager's club, for the first time since Ferguson. So, you know, basically Ferguson ran that place; it was his. I don't think that's happened since until Solskjaer. And now it really is his. Don't get me wrong; he has to win a title and keep on cementing it. But I don't really think you could expect, you know, United to be any further forward than they are at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think the key word is just progression year on year. Just obviously this season's a big one, where necessarily, even if we did finish third, it could still be classed as progression. Obviously, if we close that gap on the top, I think over the next 12 months, that's going to be the most important thing. And, you know, we might get a bit of an opportunity to capitalise on that this season with Liverpool losing Van Dijk, and City don't seem to be where they were a couple of years ago. So for you, like, is the expectation again just kind of closing the gap at the top? Is that what this season you've laid out for United?
I think you've got a chance of challenging properly, but then maybe I mean, as I say, I'm not a fan, but I am a bit of an optimist. But I'm just looking. You just mentioned the results there. I did the Leicester game where City got absolutely trounced.
Yeah.
Obviously, same night as the Spurs one got. What was it? 7-2.
Yeah.
Was it 7-2?
I know.
So immediately those two losses make. They equalise out the Spurs loss in terms of the points. Okay, you lost to Palace. Let's wait and see. But I just think if you can get Greenwood going again, like he was at the end of last season, with that goal that Fernandes scored at Newcastle said it all to me. It was the back end of that game. He'd missed a penalty, and he's still there trying. Yeah. Rashford, I think, puts him in. It's a massive it's a great move. One end of the pick, and there he is to stick it in. That's what you want. So I do give you a chance of challenging. That might sound ridiculous. Leicester won it that year. The year that Liverpool, I think, but when City got 100 points, I think Liverpool were 25 behind. The next year, they were only a point behind. So it happens. It just does.
Yeah. And with everything going on, obviously, without fans in stadiums, I don't think you can rule out any result, as we've seen like early on this season. I just wanted to pick up, obviously, you mentioned Greenwood, if we can get him firing. I noticed it was covered in the news. I know you did an article in The Guardian. He seems to have, like, I think the report was that the club have had a bit of a stern word with him. Obviously, the thing that happened with England hasn't helped at all. I don't think he's kick-started on from his momentum last season. Can you give us like as much insight as you can into that in terms of what's going on there, if possible?
One thing I would say is I am told that he's rated the best out of him, Martial and Rashford in terms of, let's say Sancho had arrived. Yeah. Maybe at first he's the younger one, but I don't think he was the one under threat necessarily. It might have been Rashford, actually.
Okay.
So that's what, but trust me, he's very young. The England thing didn't help. I thought Solskjaer stuck up for him very well by going public by saying, look, I basically said to Southgate, I don't want you to take him.
Yeah.
And then that happened with Phil Foden at City. This timekeeping thing, it's not great. It's not the biggest deal ever. He is only, 19, but he's 19. He's at Manchester United. He's had a brilliant end to the last season. He's in the England squad. I was saying to someone yesterday, I'm not saying it could go either way. It's not got to that stage yet, but he just, and I think Solskjaer's the right man, and there were sort of people there, and he's in the circle. He just needs to just sort of calm down a little bit, and just get back to playing.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's so two-footed, and he's just like, he reminds me a bit of Foden, actually. Did the game yesterday. Foden, for me, the game is easy to. It's just easy. Just that's what Greenwood's like. You just look at it, it's like effortless. It's like a voice. You know what I mean? He's 18, 19. So you've got a massive future. I mean, the future's already here, sort of thing. So I think it will. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just a little bit of bump in the road. I can remember Lampard had a big incident around about 9/11 where he wasn't particularly behaved very well publicly, had a few drinks. And look at the career he had. And I agree with anything like that. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying it happens when they're young.
Yeah.
So I'm fully confident that hopefully we'll see him against Chelsea. And, he'll score maybe.
Yeah, it's hard for Greenwood because, as you say, he's not someone who needs to be integrated slowly into the team. He's in terms of ability, he's a key starter for United already, and for a teenager, that's never easy. You look down the years of the players who have done that. You're talking about generational talents, really. So hopefully, it's just a bit of a bump in the road. But obviously, the youth has obviously been a key aspect of Solskjaer's rebuild. Promoting as many players as possible. Is the feeling, and obviously the feeling in the club, and presuming is it positive around these academy stars coming through? And obviously, us fans always like to see younger players get a chance. And what's the feeling there with the academy players with Solskjaer being in charge?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the massive things why he's so admired and respected, because I know this. Last season there was 8 first team debuts from nursery or academy players, and that's the most since the Busby Babes crop, 1952, 1953. Again, I did a story. I can't remember the exact stat, but since the sort of start of last year, 2019, you've signed. I think it's now 20. 19 of them are 16-year-olds, and there's under 17-year-old, and that's before you get to the 2 18-year-olds, Palestri and Diallo.
It seems like a lot of investment as well is going into it, like a lot of money being spent on them kind of players.
I think it's a smart move, Josh, because I think what you can argue all day long about the Glazers taking money out, and listen, they do. But what they're saying, or what why they're doing this is because they feel that it's difficult to get a Sancho, for example, because the buying club, whereas before it might have folded a little bit, it doesn't always. They kind of got a good deal with Fernandes, with Sancho. So what they're trying to do now is get these players at 15, 16 to go with their own. That they brought up like Williams and Rashford and Greenwood, and you only need one or two of them to work. Yeah. McTominay. It's a great effort. It's a great effort already, sort of with Solskjaer. And so I think. Unlike Mourinho, he actually does get excited about youth and young talent. I mean, Williams would have been one of the stories of United season last. I mean, he still is, but I mean, without Greenwood, what he did, he came in. I remember his first game against Rochdale, playing left back, and I remember he just clattered one of the Rochdale player. He just he didn't cross it. He's only, you know what I mean. So he's got. So that I would be excited if I was a United fan. I'm excited covering the club because of this, and there's been some. It's like a global thing as well. Where they get these players from. So but it's that's going to be a couple of years before you start to see how good they are. But Nicky Butt was very interesting in this. He said, "Look, because he's like head of first team for now." He basically said, "Judge me in 2 or 3 years' time if you've got players that we've developed in a title-winning team, and that's what you want. That attitude, basically." Yeah,
no, I was going to touch on that because obviously since Solskjaer got the job. There seems to have been a bit of a restructure behind the scenes with the academy and Nicky Butt taking that position. I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these young players are coming through, hopefully, and even names like Mengi, Ethan Laird as well coming through. I was wondering, what do you think of the adoption because it seems like the club have taken a fresh approach to the loan scheme, seeing like James Garner go out on loan and Dillian Levitt as well. Do you feel like the club have looked at it, and because it seems like in the past, players never really got loaned out from United, or they always kept in the ranks up until they were sometimes 21, 22 and then sold if they're not good enough. Do you think there's been a fresh adoption to the loan scheme?
Maybe a tweak. I think you're right to sort of identify that as a change. I think it's still, kind of how it was. Excuse me. I think that's also a product of how many of these good young players, they have coming through. I mean, there is so many of them. But I think they just try to be a little bit cuter. I mean, the recruitment has been awful, basically, up until Solskjaer. Post Ferguson. Woodward would admit it, for example, that they had to sort it out, and I think they have quite markedly. I always go back. That summer with David Moyes with the Fellaini thing was
shambles.
Really. And so, I mean, I think that, the loan thing you're talking about, I think, again, that's just a little tweak where they looked at it and thought, we can actually, try and get some of these lads experience. But their first choice always is, can we get them in the first team or first team squad? I think if you become a Manchester United first team squad member, of course you want them to be the first team. But if you're in that squad, that's success for the academy. Of course it is, because that means they're being played. They might become, regular players. And there is, but what's the start? You've had a player in the first team or match squad since 1938 or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
4,000 players. I mean, come on.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Solskjaer being manager, that's certainly going to carry on as well. I think slowly reaching the end point now. I'm supposed to obviously close it off. I just wondering, can we get like a sneaky prediction on maybe where you think United are going to finish this season then? I know it's not an easy question, but now we know the players Solskjaer's got. He's going to be working with this season. Where do you think we're going to come?
It's not an easy question. It's a good question, right? That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Go on, I'm going to say second.
Oh, really? Second? What, City or Liverpool above?
Liverpool.
Really? Even without Van Dijk?
Yes. Yeah. I think City. He's doing well, Guardiola, but he's got loads of injuries. He's lost Silva and De Bruyne is injured again. I just get the feeling they might slip. So yes, there you go.
Well, I'll slap your hand off if you offer me that now. So hopefully it comes true. But I appreciate your time. We've had a good chat. Obviously, 29th is when your new book's out. That's right, isn't it? 29th? Or the 27th? 29th. Okay, looking forward to reading it. And obviously the listeners have a chance of winning. So I'll leave a link to that in the description. But thank you for coming on. Appreciate your time and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Take it easy.
Yes.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.